Data tiers. As an app developer dealing with data, one of the most important concepts you can learn to embrace is the notion of data tiers, which describe the location in your system where data is processed. In designing a data-driven system, it is helpful to think in terms of the locations at which data is processed. Data tiers, or data tiering, is the logical locations devised to handle the tiers of data in a data operation: the interface tier, the processing tier, and the storage tier. Every digital data operation has three parts. It has an interface, the user-facing display where data is input, sometimes manipulated, or retrieved. For example, Google's search box. It has a processing function by which requests are received from the interface, sent to the data, and returned to the user. And it has a storage process, a file or program that stores data in either a data folder or a database. In a single tier structure, all three components occur in one program set. This usually applies for only very simple apps that use minimal or easily defined data, and situations where the app and its data won't change much over time. For example, a simple clock may have an interface, processing, and data all in one program and then divided into program folders, all local, on the device. A dual tier or two-tier structure provides only two of the three components. For example, a system might provide just an interface and processing capabilities, but not storage. The interface, or the client, sends and receives data requests to a processing facility or server, which routes the request to an external or off-site data source, and then routes responses back to the client. Other systems provide just processing and storage. In them, the processing function, or the server, receives requests from an external interface, routes to the storage, and responds. The response is carried back to the user by an external interface. The storage, or the database, receives requests from processing and responds to processing. Examples would include a data warehouse with a processing engine, and more common to mobile application development is this emerging use of APIs for specific data onto which you, developers, can affix a front-end user interface. This is becoming more and more common in app development world as companies begin to release their APIs, which is access to their data and an application programming interface onto which you can develop your apps. We will mainly encounter some form of multi-tier or three-tier structures, which are the most common, especially with robust apps, and in which data handling is separated into three operations, often at three locations: interface, processing, and storage. At the interface, or the application or presentation tier, faces the user and accepts data requests from the user and sends to the processing tier. It also provides a response to the user interface. Examples include pretty much any user-facing interface that involves a data transaction, such as a search box, a game interface, or an email or SMS interface. At the processing tier, middleware, or the server tier, accepts the user request, sends the request to storage, receives a response from storage in the form of data, and provides a response to the presentation tier formatted for the user. Middleware are software programs that only handle data requests and responses. They interact between the user and the data source so that the user never directly interacts with the data. They may provide many functions such as data handling, messaging, or procedure call from the database. At the storage tier, files store data separate from presentation and processing on the database or database server. This keeps the data neutral and independent from the presentation or application tier and the processing or the middleware tier. This also keeps data from loading up to device memory or storage, which in turn enables large data stores for tiny data calls. In other words, you can take a tiny bit of data from a huge database, such as a single address from a huge mapping database. This enables better data processing, includes more precise requests, and provides quicker responses. As it applies to mobile application design, good data design commonly uses a multi-tier structure, which keeps app processes away from data and vice versa. This is often true even if all three tiers are resident on the device, because operating system packages increasingly contain their own data storage facilities. More and more, the mobile web deploys this distributed architecture with the interface or the app on a device and processing and data at the data server in another location, often with an API so that the data server, and your application are all tied together even though they're distributed in 3 different locations. To best manage data, most mobile apps employ the data cache that exists on the device, a temporary data storage for quick retrieval. One of the major data constraints for mobile applications is that the apps are still network dependent, and transfer and latency issues remain. This has been a brief introduction to data structure and data tiering.